somewhere in here, but whoever ends up with it, make sure that there's nobody else who needs it. Let's try to get everybody's name and signature on that. But also, it's our practice to go around the room and just let everybody introduce themselves. So let's start.
Cynthia Hugo, President, Richmond City Council.
Walter Curtis, Inspector General.
Riyad Ali, City Auditor.
Brett Lewis, City Auditor's Office.
Yolanda McCoy, City Auditor's Office.
Lucian Carter, City Auditor's Office.
Greg Miller, Principal at CLA, External Audit.
Letitia Shelton, Finance Director.
Tony Donald, Chief Administrative Officer, City of Richmond.
Kristen Nye, Audit Committee Member.
Trey Sibley, Committee Member.
Liz Talley, Committee Member.
Shannon Fitzgerald, City Attorney's Office.
Julian Alvarez, Procurement Services Director.
Bailey Martin, Deputy Chief, Richmond Fire.
Monica Manning, Public Information Manager.
Brittany Phillips, P-Card Supervisor.
Office Mohammed Ahmad, City Auditor's Office.
Eunice Carter, City Auditor's Office.
Abby Rubio Valencia, City Auditor's Office. Ian Castro, City Auditor's Office.
William Brown, Deputy Inspector General.
And if you guys will introduce yourselves right now, and there's a list coming around that you get eventually.
Cynthia Jackson, DCAO Finance and Head.
Point Griffin, CEO's Office.
Perfect, thanks. So I've got two fun announcements today. One is that with the recent hiring of Avi Rubio Valencia, we, for the first time in eons, have a complete 14-member Richmond City audit staff. Way to go. That's fantastic. And you remember in the last two meetings, I've introduced various new members, but this is literally a big deal because for years we've had this meeting and we've talked about how many things we can't do because we're understaffed. And this is a great staff doing great work. I'll get to that in a minute. But Avi has 10 years experience doing federal financial statement audits. Before she joined us, she was a senior audit associate at a big four accounting firm where she learned about evaluating the internal controls, assessing compliance with laws and regulations, testing transactional data, issuing findings and recommendations, assessing corrective action plans and remediation. She got a BS in accounting and management from the University of Maryland. Way to go. I mean, that's such a great story. Now, on the how good a job they're doing, I think most of you probably saw this announcement, but this audit department won an exemplary award. The Association of Local Government Auditors has a set of awards called the Knight Awards. There are 300 or so municipalities in the U.S. and Canada that are eligible for the awards, and they give distinguished is the top of the pile. Next is exemplary. These guys got a distinguished award, and then there are 5 categories based on the size of your city. So there's like a super city, which is Los Angeles and New York. There's large audit department, which is Richmond, and then it goes all the way down to towns that have a couple of auditors. But we won the 2025 distinguished. I say we. I'm taking full credit.
Let me correct you. The highest award is the exemplary, and we won the exemplary.
Okay, that's right. Did I say? I didn't say that right. We did win the highest award that is for an audit, and we won this for the P-card audit, and the criteria are the significance of the sort of scope of the audit and its potential impact, the persuasiveness of the conclusions, which is sort of the thoroughness of your research on the the evidence that you get, the practicality and feasibility of the solution, which is one of the things this department is doing a great job of, which is not only saying here's the problem, but here's some suggestions about how you might most effectively address the problem. And then the clarity of the statement of the thing. So the great news, obviously, is that these guys receive due recognition for the great work that they're doing. And they really become a go-to department for other cities all the way around the country for 2 things, one good, one bad. The first is for advice about how to do audits as effective as the P-card audit was. The second is because they want all of our people. So I'm just saying, nobody is allowed to meeting.
That's right.
Be clear on that. But congratulations. That's fantastic. And that's a wonderful thing for the city of Richmond. And it reflects the great work you guys have done. So I'm happy about that. Next order of business is the approval of the minutes of the February 5 meeting. I could use a motion. A second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Done. Greg Miller is here from CLA. I talked to him, so every time the auditors do a report like this, they're required to make a whole bunch of disclosure about the scope of the audit and what their professional responsibilities are. And I said, can we finesse that unless anybody really needs to hear it again? And Greg said, we either have to give it to you verbally or in writing. And I said, we'd be delighted to have the letter so that we have it in writing, but when you just get right to the meat of the audit, and he graciously agreed that he would do that. So Greg, you're on.
Give me about 5 minutes to get through each one of these slides I was going to skip. All right, we'll start on audit planning and timeline and responsibility. So for those with hard copies, I think that's slide 8 on here. So from an overall audit plan approach, the thing does not come through. It should also break out like what our phases are. So we have a planning and strategies, evaluation, testing, what you normally think of the audit window, and the financial reporting. And that's where the 4 buckets are here. So preliminary procedures are planning and initial risk assessment. It's kind of at this point, and then we're moving into, currently in, actually, my folks are probably in your folks right now. For interim audit works, this is where we do a lot of control walkthroughs, testing controls, a bunch of compliance work that we can do before year end. There's a bunch of compliance work that's specified by the auditor's specifications for audits of city, counties, and towns that we'll work to accomplish over the summer months, July and August. Then at the back end of September, we'll move into that traditional final field work area of the audit, which is where you normally think is where we tick and tie things out to invoices and review management estimates, recalculate things. And then once that's completed, we'll move into our reporting phase, which is that November timeline, our time frame, reviewing the ACFR and certain prepared drafts, meeting with finance and internal audit on results of our audit. And for this year, we have set, I don't remember what the date is on top of my head, but Friday before Thanksgiving as our target date to have the ACFR wrapped up. So that's what we're all, this is a very high level schedule with broad month brushstrokes on here. But we have a very detailed by day with some fancy formulas that if you change the day, it rolls down to the what the impact might be on the opinion date on the back end. So we're all working from that, and so far we're holding true. From an overall risk assessment standpoint, so a lot of times people are like, oh, what do you do for a living? It's like, well, I can't do math like that. Auditing isn't very fancy math, but it's not always numbers. And for auditors in the room, control risk times inherent risk equals 0. Risk and material misstatements, you can add the letters in there. It looks like algebra, but from an overall risk standpoint, the auditing standards require us to at least identify revenue recognition and management override controls as significant or fraud risks. Significant fraud risks, we have those incorporated into our audit from a high level standpoint. We then look at the inherent risk. So inherent risk is the risk that something has absent of any controls that might result in a material misstatement, whether due to fraud or error. From our standpoint, looking at cash and investments, cash primarily due to the high volume of transactions and the sensitivity of cash. Also, if you can prove out cash at the beginning of the year and prove out cash at the end of the year, then your ups and your downs between the two can only be but so far off. And if they're off by the same amount. It's opposite directions. A little bit more math. Revenue recognition, as I mentioned, particularly around exchange transactions, as well as cutoff as it relates to tax revenue streams, as well as other local government revenue streams from a cutoff perspective. Every set of financial statements has an element of estimation or professional judgment that's required to develop those numbers. So, those significant estimates of the financial statements are typically your pension OPEB, your IBNR for claims liabilities, capital assets is another one, maybe not as significant. Allowance for doubtful account calculations is also another one. So we've identified those as more inherently riskier than some other elements of the financial statements. And then debt and covenants, particularly the covenant side, well, debt and covenants, both in this case, but make sure that we're maintaining compliance with any financial related covenants with any of our bond deals, and then reviewing any bond issuances during the year and how those are reported and presented in the face of the financial statements. From a control risk standpoint, that's what our team's working on now. They're doing the walkthroughs, so meeting with folks that are actually do the day-to-day processing and walking transactions from cradle to grave through that process. And then from there, we identify what the key controls are, develop tests of controls to determine whether those controls have been implemented, but not for the purpose of expressing an opinion on the operating effect. The one element I haven't talked about yet on here is detection risk, and that's the risk that the risk that the samples that we select are the ones that are all good, and we don't select the one that's bad. The way we try to adapt to detection risk is to create a level of unpredictability within the audit. So change the way we're doing procedures that we've been doing for a long time, add in some procedures that we haven't done in the past, and kind of give it a tweak on that, as well as using data analytics that can use the whole GL system to run scripts and identify to make sure that the revenues are flowing through the right debit credit process. So that's our overall audit plan overview from a risk assessment standpoint. I do have a slide a couple later on that I would appreciate y'all's thoughts on any unusual transactions. But on this next slide, I did hit a couple of bullets on here on the previous slide, walking through all these. The ones I did not hit, I guess overall, it's a risk-based audit approach. That doesn't mean there's a number in the financial statements we don't touch. It's just there's some numbers in the financial statements that we spend more time on than others. And that there's no way that we could test 100% of the city's transactions in any year within the financial statements. I don't think what the budget is, it's not going to hold any firm coming in to validate 100% of your transactions. But the two yellow pieces that I haven't touched in the previous slide, compliance with laws and regulations. From the nature of your revenues, you've got a lot of revenue that comes from the state. There's compliance requirements that come with that. Anytime you take $1 from the state, there's always something tied to it. You've got to have some compliance requirements around that. So we do perform the procedures required by the APA, as well as the single audits, the uniform guidance, and the compliance supplement that's issued by OMB. OMB has not issued the current 26 compliance supplement, which does typically come out about this time of year. I think it came out the Wednesday before Thanksgiving last year, which was significantly delayed, which had a big ripple effect across the country. But when that comes out, we'll update our testing as it relates to that. So from an audit responsibility standpoint, from the auditor standpoint, our responsibility is to design and plan the audit to obtain reasonable assurance that the financial statements are presented in accordance with GAAP, or generally accepted accounting principles, and to express an opinion on that. We are required to follow the general accepting auditing standards as well as the governmental auditing standards. I mentioned the APA and OMB requirements. Our opinion is to give reasonable assurance, but not absolute. From that, not absolute assurance on the numbers within the financial statements. From a management standpoint, management is responsible for preparing the financial statements and implementing or designing, implementing, and maintaining a set of internal controls in order to prevent or detect errors, whether due to fraud or error, on a timely basis, for establishing and maintaining policies and procedures, and implementing programs to prevent and detect fraud. From a governance standpoint, governance is pretty much responsible for everything, right? Not joking. But from an audit committee standpoint, you guys have the oversight of the audit functions. So that's the overall strategy and decision-making process from an audit perspective. as well as holding those key stakeholders accountable, including that of the final report. As I mentioned a couple slides ago, I would appreciate input from y'all's vantage point. If there's any focus areas, any significant unusual transaction this year that might give you pause, any other concerns, whether it be litigation, operations, or industry trends, and most thoughts or views as it relates to fiscal fraud and how it might impact the city overall.
Yeah. From the committee standpoint, I think we feel like we've got a good chief administrative officer and a good auditor, and that we've seen processes improve steadily. And that may be a dangerous condition. We have to guard against complacency as a committee, but I think what we're watching here is just a higher level of performance on the ground. And there's nothing, when I look at these, I don't see one that stands out to me, and certainly not one that I don't think these guys have their eye on. I don't know whether any other.
Just add, I think while this is one offering, I think the audit, not the audit committee, the auditor, the office of the auditor, does a full list, kind of touching all of these activities with their audit plan. And so from the administration and not here, so speaking on behalf of the mayor in that way, they have a very robust audit plan. Almost, it's a lot. It's a lot. I think that they touch all of these various areas, and they really kind of double down. I'll just tell you, fraud, for instance, is one. I know when we look at everything from duplicate payments to the P card audits, the second round of those things, I think complacency is something that normally in other cities is something that we are usually concerned about, but they're already focusing on going into a round 2 to even look at progress. So for me, I think I've been satisfied and thankful, while admitting that it can sometimes be overwhelming, thankful that the thorough nature of our audit process. And I'm not sure if, again, like you said, I think these things are being touched, but I would also encourage external auditors to continue to offer it on a regular basis if capacity became an issue, although I know y'all been hiring folks like wildfire, so capacity has increased. So like I said, in other jurisdictions, I have noticed that we have sought additional support, but here I think the investments that have been made by specifically the council, the audit committee to elevate that, I don't necessarily see the need this year. Not to say that they may not, I would defer from reading the room, right? And if that's the position of the auditor, I can tell you from a recipient of services, I think we get a lot of services out there.
Good. Glad to hear it. We're going to serve you as aggressively as we can.
That's exactly what you're doing. That's exactly what you're doing.
One thing I do notice, the last one is threshold for communication, and I do think that the city has struggled with transparency. That's just a fact, and I'm sure that's true of every city. But that when you say threshold for communication, I'm not really sure how this plugs into the audit. But as a chairman of the audit committee, if there were one thing that I could wave a wand and improve just for everybody's benefit is creating. A lot of this is communication too. It's not that there's a problem. It's that there's a perception of a problem. But if I didn't read in the newspaper as often that there was a FOIA request because people had asked for information and the city wouldn't provide it, and a lot of times you have to read through the kind of BS in the news article as well. But I think how we communicate what a good job the city government is doing would We certainly make your life easier. But I think that's a goal, and I don't know exactly how you guys can, in your audit process, monitor that. I just think that it's a constant give and take between citizens and the city government, and my sense is that the perception is harsher than the government deserves. And it would be great to figure out how collectively we can address that problem in a way that takes pressure off the government while citizens feel like there's more of an open book. That's what.
Yeah, that'd be a difficult element to do from a financial standpoint perspective. As well as they're more of like, what kind of threshold do you want us to communicate to y'all of things as we come along? Things in the element of transparency. A lot of places can do a data dump of information out there and trying to say, hey, we're trying to be transparent. But most of that is just noise, which creates a lack of transparency. So it's cutting through that noise to actually find the true transparency during our audit process, what would be relevant for y'all's attention as we run across things through the audit process.
Yeah, I don't think there's a specific answer, but I think the general answer is that this is an area of concern because it puts pressure that if there are misperceptions among the based on the data sources that are available to citizens, it puts unfair pressure on the city government, which I think is doing a good job. So what you guys are professionals who have an objective look, and I would say this would be one that every time you come before this committee and make a report, if there's your spidey sense is telling you that there might be a transparency issue or a communication issue, we welcome you to talk about it. Let's talk about it in here and see if we can figure out a way to make it better. So,
Mr. Chair, I'd like to highlight just one thing, if that's okay.
sure.
You bring up an extraordinary point, is what I have learned, whether it be, what do they call it, sidebar, open bar.
Right,
people are very clear that communication has been an issue. And I'll just highlight, even today, the mayor, and one thing, we try to do everything in lockstep with council. And in doing so, that helps because now instead of a singular person who represents all the districts, you also have those 9 personalities, with him 10, that focused on telling the story of the individual districts and the city and how our efforts impact them. Today, while we're here talking about the PCAR, I know it's a public meeting, and you'll hear from Mr. Alvarez, myself, and others about that specific issue. One of the things that the mayor's doing different, and I think we have to continue doing, is we went to the press today just to say, hey, look at this. We're going to talk about it later today, but right now, we want to share with you that there is progress happening. It's not done. I think that's another thing that the mayor's changing, is that as we go through this iterative process, take a look at what we're doing so that you can either talk about it now or you can wait until later, but no secrets in the storehouse. We're sharing what's going on. I also think that's helpful because we're doing the same thing with the auditor. We're saying, hey, okay, y'all want to look at some stuff? Well, let's talk about order because we're working on this now. We would love for y'all to look at it versus waiting and then we make a mistake or we don't see something and we miss out on that opportunity. I think that new perspective by the mayor is something that I can't take credit for, Michelle, none of us, but I think his willingness to partner with all parties, including, other elected officials, but those who do the work is a part of the story that I'm hearing what you're saying about that communication and transparency. And also Mr. Miller just made an excellent point. The guise of transparency is much different than the delivery of transparency. And so I think we have to do that together. I don't think it's just calling on these external folks. I really do think that's a government to government, agency to agency, as well as boards and commissions like this, us all kind of figuring out how to do it together. I would just offer that.
I agree. I appreciate that. Thank you. I think that's exactly right.
My next slide is just a summary of some of the results from last year's audit process. It's a copy paste from the slide deck that was presented to City Council as we presented the results of the fiscal year 25 Act for Audit. I'm not going to go in broad detail into these items, but these are our findings and recommendations, or summary of the findings and recommendations. We are required to follow up on those in the subsequent years. We have incorporated these into our audit plan for this year. Everything, the social services down is all APA compliance related. So those will get tested this year. The material weakness aspect has to do with a particular bond issuance. So if there's no bond, if that scenario doesn't exactly recreate itself this year, there's no way for me to test it to say it doesn't happen again. But we will be looking at debt, as I mentioned earlier in the previous slides. And I believe there's been some additions in finance as well as internal audit recently to kind of help address that second. On the next slide is a status update from the fiscal year 25 single audit. I've listed the four programs. Four programs for fiscal year 25 that we tested. We're currently in the review phase and then moving into the reporting phase for that. And currently we have no findings identified. As I mentioned earlier, OMB was significantly delayed in issuing the compliance supplement, which are that's the federal government telling your auditor what steps, what to go look at for a particular program. So it's kind of hard to go do the compliance testing because the federal government tells us what to go look at. With that, that's kind of the back end of my communications. But if there's any questions or feedback, more than happy to take them.
Thank you. All right. Audit.
So, first of all, good afternoon, audit committee members. Thank you for joining us today. Chairman Bemis, he kind of stole my thunder a little bit there. So, I am very happy.
Let's give you more time to look after Odie.
Come on, man, we don't need to give.
No, I am very happy to share that we are fully staffed. It was, I think when I came in, I was like, okay, I got to get this done. And it took way longer than I thought. It was much harder in this economy, in this environment to get there. But we're very, very happy that we are there for the first time, like you said. And I don't even know how long. So with so many new staff members joining the office, this fiscal year has really been focused on developing the foundational elements of the office. With updated trainings, updated policies, and lots and lots and lots of internal improvements. I'm sure they're tired of it at this point. You'll continue to see that reflected in our processes, in the structure of the office, as you kind of see our new structure needs some changes, and in the audit reports that you guys get and receive. You'll see even more changes coming to how we write them, how we display them for ease of reading and use. Lots of changes coming, as our goal is to continue to be a model government office. And again, speaking of that, we did win the Exemplary Knighton Award recently, so I don't want to congratulate our staff for the hard work on that audit. The Knighton Award, it recognizes excellence in local government auditing. And, you know, it reflects the hard work that we put into every single report. We're working on one now, and it is tons and tons and tons of work to get it right and easy to understand. But it also reflects the support that we continue to receive from City Council and from the Audit Committee. And I think one of the important things note mentioning is it even reflects on the commitment that city administration has placed on implementing so many of the recommendations that we issue from these very detailed, long root cause reports, and that they are committed to implementing fixes for those problems. And that commitment, I think, in auditing is extremely important. It leads to effective auditing, where auditors can clearly and objectively identify issues, and where management takes that timely corrective action. I will say that last month, I believe it was, we were very, impressed with the mayor's visit to our office and to speak to our staff. And he really discussed that the cities and administrations look for it, find it, fix it philosophy to the government. And he emphasized the importance that they're placing on closing the recommendations, right to our staff, the hard work that, again, look for it, find it, fix it is the approach that's being utilized. And I will say, since I started as a city auditor about 2.5 years now, there has been tremendous progress in closing the recommendations. I inherited a lot of open recommendations, and with our approach to the continuous closing of recommendations, continuous monitoring that we've been doing with recommendations, we've been seeing them go down. The recommendations, as you guys know, have become much more complex, much more comprehensive, and they contain dozens of management actions that have to be taken oftentimes to close it. But we are seeing a lot of progress from a lot of different departments in getting them implemented. So we're very happy to see that. And so normally, I guess with the auditor, you hear it's often bad news. I know that everyone looks at me, oh, you're Riyadh again. I do want to, just some good news. I do want to recognize CA O'Donnell, as well as Director Alvarez and Director Morris, Scott Morris with DPU, for closing so many of these recommendations related to the purchasing card audit and program, as well as the DPU's warehouse audits that we did last year. My team, when we review these recommendations, obviously we can't promise things are always going to work. We can promise that we've seen a control process design that should work with effective monitoring. And when we reviewed the recommendations, both from the DPU warehouse, they gave us exhaustive SOPs of how they're going to run the warehouse and track inventory and identify outliers. And then the purchasing card program, and I've told this to Director Alvarez, the quality of the training was some of the best I've seen. In-depth training, telling you what to do, what's allowed, interactive, easy to understand. We had to take it ourselves, and our team was very impressed with what we're seeing, and it will help relaunch the program effectively. Obviously, again, with proper monitoring, we'll go back and verify, but it is a great starting point for one of the biggest things we always say, almost every audit is training, and it was excellent what we saw. So that was excellent work that we've seen with the recommendations. So today we're going to cover 5 different reports that our office has issued since the last time we met, I think back in February. That includes our Affordable Housing Trust Fund funding audit or report that was done at the request of City Council, our analysis of duplicate payments, 2 different follow-up reports that we've issued on recommendations this quarter, as well as the Richmond National Community Survey. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it on over to Deputy City Auditor Brett Lewis for that first presentation.
Thank you, Riad. So as Riad noted, this is the presentation on the Affordable Housing Trust Fund special request that our office received. I'd like to start by thanking the Finance Department as well as the administration for their help and assistance with the project. I'd like to also thank the auditors that worked on the project, Eunice Carter, who you will hear from shortly, and Tram Nguyen. A little bit of background: the purpose of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund was to help meet the needs of low-income housing within the city by providing grants and loans to for-profit and nonprofit housing developers to create affordable rental and owner-occupied housing within the city. In order to generate revenues for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, City Code 1246 established 2 main streams of that revenue. First, it was the revenue from the expiration of partial exemptions from real estate taxation. And secondly, it was the revenue from certain sale of tax delinquent properties that's managed by the city attorney's office. And when these 2 sets of revenues are generated and the calculation was to be done, they were to be set aside in a special reserve for which then council could then make a decision to appropriate it to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So as we noted, this was a special request we received from City Council, and it was related to City Code 12-46. The request had 3 main objectives: basically to discover the amount that should have been collected on an annual basis to be set aside in the reserves, determine if the Finance Department had collected those money and set them aside, and if not, understand why. And now I'll turn it over to Eunice Carter for the observations from the report.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Brett.
When you just press it. There you go. You gotta go left and right.
I'll get it. I'll get it. I'll get it. So overall, the city did not consistently implement the Affordable Housing Trust Fund requirement in City Code 12-46. And key elements of the requirements were unclear or not adhered to, in part due to the absence of a documented implementation plan. It is important to note, however, Code 12-46 has been repealed and replaced by new revenue source for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. We noted during the audit, the city did not consistently credit the special reserve as required for amounts associated with partial real estate tax exemption. And credited funds were not appropriated to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. However, for 1 year, in fiscal year 2022, approximately $2.5 million was set aside in a special reserve, but we noted that these funds had not been appropriated. The calculation in City Code 12-46, Section A, did not match the verbiage in the ordinance or the resolution request. Due to this difference, we could not determine how much should have been set aside in the reserve. Thirdly, City Code 1246, Section B part did not clearly define the kind of credits from delinquent tax sale proceeds, and amounts were not historically credited to the special reserve due to the lack of clarity in the code. However, in fiscal year 2026, we did observe $2 billion was appropriated directly to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And lastly, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund had not been created. However, prior to the end, the Finance Department created the fund. There were 7 recommendations issued, and the management agreed with all of them. A few of the key recommendations included addressing issues within Code 1246 through the legislation and an implementation plan. And as noted earlier, Code 12-46 was repealed and replaced. Secondly, making a decision on the allocation of the $2.5 million maintained in the reserve. And third, the development of a quality review process for proposed ordinances and codes. Any questions or comments?
I think normally we let administration speak on the report first.
We'll just highlight, so this was, like, being a semi-newbie at the time this was taking place, this is one of the more instructive audits that all of them that we're going to discuss today are pretty instructive. But this one, I actually saw the results of it yesterday during our conversations around maybe it was RAA, I can't remember what we were talking about, but the council, no prodding from any of us, no staff, we're like, hey, what are we going to do about implementation plan here? How are we going to address having an implementation plan with this legislation? It's very important because that is the way we have partnership and teamwork. And when we looked at this audit, it was one of the things that historically these things should have been fixed. But having an implementation plan on the front end, or at least a delayed period, which you can figure out how we deliver, is just beyond helpful. And I think what you saw from the audit, which I thought was helpful, but it's also evidence that we jumped on it. FY26, you saw, man, we put that money in there. You know, that's what you're required to do by law. So we're gonna abide by the law. So those funds were there. That's a thing that we are stringent on with the Vula administration, is making sure we abide by the law and we deliver appropriately. There are plenty of reasons why things that happened in the past. I'm not going to talk negatively about that because those explanations make great sense and they're just a guiding light for how we continuously improve on things to make them better. And then I think the other part that, I did want to highlight is, one, I think it's helpful if, people go back and look at not only the audit, but how we concur and why. Because I think a part of what, has been important to just be as personally, individually, to make sure we respond and say, hey, not only what we're going to do, but this is why and how. And in this instance, one piece that we noticed, to everyone else it may be minor, but the first thing we did is actually open a specific account for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. doesn't sound like much to other people, but it means we can look at the inflows and outflows. It is actual transparency, and it's the first thing that we did. Those 7 recommendations are not easy, and it was the low-hanging fruit, but probably the most important to make sure that the other 6 can happen. And we did that, I believe, at the time of print, if I'm not mistaken. So, you know, we did that early, and I just want to highlight that because that is our commitment. Things are going to not be perfect, but we're going to do whatever we can to get it right. And I hope both to the committee, to the council, and to the public, they see that we're committed so much so that before the ink was dry and things were published, we had already taken those steps. We don't plan to stop.
Any questions from the?
Thank you, that's great.
On to the next audits to get taken together. That's lead auditor Leanne Castro, the 2 follow-up reports that we issued since the last time.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Today I'm going to talk about our final 2 follow-up periods of fiscal year 2026, and then I'm going to recap fiscal year 2026 as a whole. So as part of our review, we interviewed management personnel and staff, and then we reviewed documentation that was submitted by the departments to support the implementation of open audit recommendations. These 7 departments closed recommendations during the last 2 follow-up periods. A total of 34 recommendations were closed, with 18 being high priority, 13 medium, and 3 low priority. 4 recommendations were removed due to no longer being feasible to complete. Additionally, in the 3rd period, planning and development review reported that it recovered almost $4,000 in duplicate payments that were identified in past continuous monitoring audits. This amount does not include any recoveries from the most recent continuous monitoring audit. Those will be reflected in the 1st period of fiscal year 27. So some of the recommendations that were closed were related to bad debt reconciliations, identification of deceased retirees overpayments, P-card administration and monitoring, warehousing, defined line items and contracts, and establishing a funding mechanism for non-departmental charitable grants, among other findings. We would like to thank the administration and department staff for their work on implementing these recommendations. So now that I'm going to give you just an overview of the open recommendations during the 2nd and 3rd periods. So we started the 2nd period with 130 open recommendations. And during these 2 periods, 17 recommendations were added, 34 were closed, and 4 were removed. And so at the end of the final period, there were 109 open recommendations, with 41 of those being high priority. And of the 109 recommendations that remained open, 97 of those are past their original target implementation date. At this time, I want to reiterate this is a point in time report. Departments are constantly sending us information that we review to potentially close recommendations. Since we have closed and issued the last period's report, we have already closed 6 recommendations for the new period, and we're reviewing about 15 others. Now I'm going to recap fiscal year 26 as a whole. So this is going to include all our closures and removals from all 3 reporting periods in fiscal year 26. 65 total recommendations were closed by 10 departments. Of these, 26 were high priority. 5 recommendations in total were removed either to be no longer feasible or no longer applicable. And at the end of fiscal year 26, 109 recommendations remained open and 41 of those were. And finally, I want to talk about looking ahead to fiscal year 27. We have some upcoming enhancements to our follow-up process. So first, we're currently working with the CAO's office and DIT to create an interactive audit recommendation dashboard for the external website. This project is currently in the design phase. We plan on testing internally first and then publishing it on the external website afterwards. Anyone will be able to see any open and closed recommendations that we will do by department, by audit report, by year, priority, stuff like that. Next, we are going to test putting our recommendations into broad categories based on major theme or topic. We've defined the categories. We pass this along to administration staff for their input as well. Categorizing recommendations can help identify areas that need improvement or extra focus. It will be useful in trend analysis. And finally, during the first period of fiscal year 27, we plan on meeting with all departments that have open recommendations to talk about their implementation plans for their remaining recommendations. Any questions or comments?
Two comments. One from repeating something that Riyadh told me last week at lunch. And that is that one of the things that I think you guys have done a good job of is look at target dates and determine whether they're realistic. Because there are a lot of past due recommendations where the original target date was not a realistic date in the first place. And making it fair for the administration is a desirable thing. And then I think the removal of inapplicable or just obsolete recommendations is great, because it still drives me crazy to see 2021 recommendations that are unfulfilled. That's silly. We need to figure out a way to get it within, I don't know what's the ideal period of time, but there's got to be a pretty good reason why a 5-year-old recommendation hasn't been addressed. And it'd be great, maybe by the time I depart in November or whatever, to get everything back to about 24 off It would be a bonus for that. But I think it's great. I think the work you do is great. And I love that each time we come to the meeting, you close more than you should do. So that's fantastic.
And that's the big part of the cleanup process where Leanne is going to work with the departments to figure out which ones really are applicable, which ones are not. And then really what's the plan to get them closed? Because we're not just going to remove them if they're still relevant, right? That's not, we want the problem to be actually fixed. So that's a big part of what we're doing. And I think, as I mentioned at lunch, and I've talked to administration about this, we give the priority level, administration gives us the time frame. And so, I do think sometimes the timeframes need to be realistic. That's what we constantly say in our exit meetings. Realistic timeframes, obviously you have to think about how high priority something is, right? That means it's super important, so you do want to get it done quickly, but what you realistically could do is the timeframe we're looking for. We're not looking for magic. We want, something to realistically test against, right?
Follow up on the chairman's question. So the target dates, I guess you then approach the administration with the recommendation, and they come back to you with what they believe they can get done
Yes.
in a certain period of time. And is that an iterative process, or you guys went back and forth? Here's our date. 6 months later, halfway through the midpoint, or at the midpoint, we're not going to make it in the next 6 months, right?
So we report on the original target date, and we do keep internally when those changes are made. They ask, well, we couldn't do it, and so that's why one of the big reasons we want to get this dashboard is there's so much information that to simplify the reporting in real time of what's happening where. It's very difficult, as the auditors want to be fully transparent on all of the information. And so the dashboard is the helping piece to show what's happening when and where things are. Because, oftentimes, sometimes you come up with a date and you realize the date isn't realistic for a legitimate reason. And so we're still working through that process internally. How do we show that? How do we update what information? Because we have all of it internally. And so what do we update publicly? Is where we're discussing even an aging schedule on the dashboard that just generally shows you how old certain recommendations are.
You guys are assessing where they're at on fulfilling these recommendations when it comes up to their target date. So if you haven't pushed out that date, then you are doing the extra work of trying to figure out where it stands, knowing that it's not going to be anywhere near resolved, right?
Yeah. So the way our follow-up process works is when the new period starts, we reach out to the departments, tell them what's open, and they have to come back to us and say, okay, here's where something is, where it's ready. Because we can't review all 100. So we kind of say, okay, the ones that you are bringing to us and asking for a review, we review those. And so that's what this difference in this first period is. We're going to now more proactively go to the departments and say, okay, let's sit down and go through, all the recommendations and kind of sort it out. I think what we've seen with departments, and I think DPU is a great example, is when we do that process, because they had the most and now they're almost done. We almost got them to 0 at this point. And we've done a lot of that with them because they keep coming back to us to say, hey, let's sit down and go through these. We can get through them pretty quickly. So we're going to try that process across the board and kind of try to, assess them better and figure it out, what the plan is to get it closed.
Fantastic. fantastic. So I think that I have the sense that another thing that happens is you issue a recommendation, and the time frame is for whatever reason unrealistically short. As soon as you've passed the original date, it's like unless somebody asks every now and then what's going on with that, it's easy just to say, well, we're not worried about that one. We're worried about the ones that are current.
That's what's happening. That's exactly. So the newer ones, the ones that I've issued since I became the auditor in the last 2, those are those, ironically, if I'm being honest, those are the harder ones, and those are the ones that are getting closed. Which is why I kind of come here and I kind of feel good about things, because the difficult ones that are the newer ones, whether it's retirement, P card, warehousing, the non-departmental, those are, if you read them, they're much more comprehensive and complex. I know Director Al will tell you the amount of action items on the P card one, but those are the ones that are getting closed. And I think it also has to do with how we're writing them a little bit clearer now. So, our new approach of the concept with the action items helps get them closed, because it's very clear as to what the approach would be to accomplish the concept.
I have a question.
Yes.
What is the process for removing a recommendation? And can you provide an example of a recommendation during this last review that was removed?
Yeah, so departments submit a justification form that we have developed, and they have to submit evidence of why, explain why, and then show us realistically why this no longer is applicable. And so once it goes through the follow-up team, I ultimately review it and say, okay, they explain to me what they're seeing, what their opinion is, and then I say, okay, I agree or I disagree. Sometimes I have disagreed in the past. Other times I 5 times agreed. It's often things that are so old the department may not be doing that function anymore. I don't know, what's one of the recent ones?
One of the recent ones we had is a certain program that was it started off under the Office of Community Wealth Building, and then it moved to the Office of Human Services. It's a completely different program now. So it's a completely different thing. So the recommendations that we originally recommended are no longer applicable because the program's completely different.
And we focus on, as I've told the departments constantly, fixing the problem. And even if you didn't do what the recommendation says, it relates to an issue that we identified. So if we can see you've designed something to resolve the problem, the recommendation goes. That's kind of our approach to the recommendations. You don't have to do exactly what it says. You have to fix the overarching problem that's described to a point that, again, not perfection, like we said earlier, where we're confident that we fix the problem and further monitoring. Obviously you have to constantly monitor your operations. Things should work. And then you'll adjust as needed, because of course, nothing's set in stone. That's kind of the approach that we utilize.
Okay, so maybe there's some specific examples just in what you prepared in the packet. Like, for example, I think the chairman was mentioning this one. Well, let me preface and say, I guess I understand when there is 50, I think, finance and chief administrative officers' offices has hundreds or dozens of recommendations. But for some of the offices have a single recommendation, like for the police department. It was issued a recommendation in 2020. Its target date was 7/1/21, but they only have one recommendation, and it is a high-level recommendation. I just wonder why.
Yeah, I actually was going to answer the question that you asked. I'll just hop in. I would first take us to, just jotted down some notes. I think I answered some of the questions that you're asking collectively. So I think the first thing is, because there's just a change. It's an iterative process. First thing is, I think what we're excited about is there have been 65 total resolved during the period. I'm counting when Mr. Donald stepped in the door, right? 65 of them. And that number was much lower than our last period of reporting. But one of my seatmate, I'm calling you my seatmate here, one of my seatmate then, she was sitting down there. Something about that seat, by the way.
It's tough, man.
That seat is the tough seat. We're moving you down here.
To the hot seat.
That's right. That's right. But the level, the question you asked was about high priority. If you remember, the high priority were not as high, right? And so what we've done, first thing is, you see those two folks sitting there, Ms. Moore and Mr. Griffin. They are new additions to my office, and they backfill other staff members. And their focus is actually on this work, government improvement, and each one by trade, while she's not a part of the city attorney's office, she is a lawyer in good standing, Ms. Moore, and a former chief of staff and coordinator, Mr. Griffin, who specialty was in audit resolution. And so those two have been brought in primarily to help with citywide coordination. Because you're right, when we look at the numbers, 26 high priority within this period is more than ever. All of these numbers are historic. But the first time we don't reach them, it's gonna be like city no longer makes historic improvements. That ain't crazy. So we're gonna make sure that we do that. And so what we're focused on is identifying those areas. The one from 2020, just coincidentally, I looked at that as well. And while it was initially high priority, the adjustments in technology, our use of new technology, even the updating policies that have happened twice since activities in 2020 to now actually changed and not from an audit, I'm not speaking from the auditors, but from our perspective, when we look at all of the high priority and all of the activities, what we're seeing is the issues that have been, not the issues, the recommendations that have been issued during the current auditor's term have direct need for resolution. The P card, for example, as well as warehouse, we haven't talked a ton about, but that one was very important for us to begin resolving because even how we define warehouses needed to be upgraded so that our policies can match. And so and I'm not going to say those two are focused on looking at what are all of the open recommendations and then prioritizing from there, because some of them can be lumped together while others would be handled one off. And listen, capacity is an issue that has been audited every which way. And then we also have to make sure that we are, doing those things as well and adding context. I did just want to highlight that and also give you the confidence that you can see the results. I think the last time we only had 9 total high priority, and you were like, hey, it's great that y'all did 31, but where are these high priorities? And now our total high priorities look at 26. I think that is we hear you, but we're also systematically looking at it. So I hope that answered your question.
Absolutely, and I'm relatively new to the audit committee, and I did my research before today's meeting to look at, since the administration's come in, just how many of these recommendations have been resolved in contrast to the past. And I'm hopeful and excited about the 2 members you just brought on to address that coordination issue, because I agree with you. Your department and finances so many of these recommendations, probably rightfully so, where the meat of the work is being done, and being able to allocate and manage these one-off items at some of the other departments, I think will be helpful, because no one, as the chairman said, seeing something in 2020, I'm sure it caught your eye too. You were mentioning. That's right.
There's one thing that I would offer Mr. Chairman in closing, and I don't want to lose it. So we don't know how things were done in the past. I don't ask, just to be honest. I'm focused on that. But realistic timeframes are important, and that's something that's not on the onus of the auditor. The city gets to decide that. And so when we talk about, and I'm not going to call out any names, but we've had folks say, oh yeah, man, we can get that done in 3 months. No, the H word you cannot. It doesn't work like that, right? So you got to have a realistic time frame. And what we're also seeing is on some of the old ones, it is those time frames unrealistic. And now as we look at them, technology has changed, the management process has changed, and thus the priority of that finding and resolving it has changed. And so we're working through that, and we'll be coming, of course, and they have been out, they will tell us no a lot, but we will bring requests forward that say, hey, this whole environment has changed. How can we resolve this one? Because look at the great thing that we're doing here. And so that process, I heard someone ask, was it iterative? I would say that portion for sure is, because we're going back and forth about that. But the onus on getting realistic time frame, that is on the administration. And I think that's why you see us closing so many, because we're saying, no, we can't do this for 6 months. It's going to take us a little bit of time. I think the Affordable Housing Trust Fund might have been one of those where it required me and Mr. Warren from council to partner together. Oversee that dude, I can't tell him a time frame, same for him. So we have to give ourselves more time. So I think that's just an example of the thoughtfulness that the audit committee has been pushing us to. So.
Yeah. And again, I've touched on this so often, and I think it's just an important thing, right? That as you see, the complexity of the recommendations are higher than they've ever been. When we draft them, we look, they were like, well, this is going to be difficult. This is not what we're telling you to do. We're recommending to fix the root cause of the problem, because we do a root cause analysis, is not easy. Like but we're seeing those close, which is why, again, I come and I feel confident in what I'm seeing, because the difficulty of what we're saying, like the B Corp was a great example. They are getting closed, and they're more complex than we've ever issued recommendations before.
It's a testament to everyone's work on the team across the table.
Yeah, I have two quick things. Okay, so one, the dashboard, super excited about that. And I think that goes to Sam's point earlier about transparency and everything. Like I'm very excited. One suggestion is, you said you're gonna vet it internally with the departments. It would be great to vet it with the audit committee too, because that's what we were appointed to do.
Yep.
So I would love to take a look at that before it rolls out. And then with the thing we're talking about right now with the closed, so RRS, one of the recommendations was about people who were deceased, their family were collecting their payments. What is that one of the ones that was resolved? I know you said like some funds were recouped, but it was only like $4K. So
Yeah, no, at least not the funds recouped, but I don't remember off the top of my head which one the RRS was.
Those are all closed, but also with recoupment pieces, they have to tell us like, hey, how much has been recouped. With that piece, we would have identified or looked at the process that they had put in place to close it. Especially in any collections, we have to allow them to supply to us.
Yeah, it's process. Our recommendations are like process wise, how you fix the problem moving forward.
Okay.
Sometimes
we're not going, because I think my direct question was, did people break the law? And I don't think I got an answer on that.
Yeah, so, and I think that piece, we had referred that actually to the IG for that determination of if there's any illegal issue here. For RS to also refer, I think part of the record, if I remember, is a while back now, referred some over to the IG for their consideration, for their knowledge about it, and for RS to do their analysis and turn that information over to the IG if they identify those types of issues.
Okay.
And our recommendation was focused on, okay, what's the process that needs to be in place? So that, number one, that doesn't happen moving forward. And of course, number two, there's a recoupment process that didn't exist that you needed to develop, moving forward.
Okay, so they did those two things.
Yes, yeah.
But in terms of like, did somebody break the law, or are we ever gonna get any of that money back? We still don't know, unless you have anything for me.
We still don't know.
Okay, all right. Thanks, that's okay.
Good question.
Yes.
I guess any other questions? No? All right, so we will move on to our a new initiative, the continuous monitoring review. The alarm is starting now.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to go over the results from our duplicate payment review, but I wanted to take time to thank the different departments and their staff for all of their assistance throughout this process and their timely response for audit inquiries and documentation requests. I also wanted to thank our senior auditor, Amar, for his work. So our duplicate payment review was completed as a part of our continuous monitoring work. And as a part of that work, we periodically review city data. We're looking for specific targeted risk areas. And so these reviews are narrower in scope than a traditional audit itself. It allows us an opportunity to kind of do a high level type review to see if there are any areas of concern. It also allows us to communicate our observations timelier with the administration and management. A goal of these continuous reviews is just look at the data for unusual transactions. Maybe there are some anomalies, some non-compliance or other risk indicators. And as I mentioned, these are narrow scope audits because we are looking at specific risk targets. And so this also helps us identify areas where there may be additional work that we need to do from an audit perspective. So as a part of this review, we looked at the FY24 and FY25 payments to identify duplicates. And we focused on two areas because there are a lot of different transactions. So to narrow down our scope a little bit more manageable to review, because this is a highly manually intensive process. We focused on invoices that were greater than $500 from the same vendor, had the same invoice amount, same invoice date, but they had different invoice numbers. And we also looked at invoices where the numbers were the same, the amounts were the same, they were issued within the same department, but they were paid to different vendors. And so that's kind of how we made this a little bit more manageable from our perspective. So just a little background, duplicate payments occur when you're paying for the same goods and services more than once. Some of the common causes could be multiple submissions of a single invoice, could be a slight variation in the invoice numbers with the invoice numbers being altered. Sometimes having multiple records in our supplier database for a single vendor could lead to duplicates. We also saw some examples where payments went out originally to the incorrect vendor, and then they were subsequently reissued to the correct vendor, creating a duplicate payment. But I wanted to point out that duplicate payments are normal in any payment process itself. The risk increased if you're dealing with an organization that has a high volume of those transactions, or maybe they have weaker controls. And so there is a need to have stronger controls and monitoring to monitor for those items and detect or even prevent these errors. And when duplicates do occur, as an inefficient of public funds also creates an administrative burden to kind of reconcile and try to recoup those monies back. But it also could affect the reputation of the organization if they're not properly handled. So the key results from this finding or from this review was we identified 50 invoices that totaled approximately $5.7 million that were duplicate payments. But I kind of wanted to point out and make sure that I highlight this. 98% of those funds have already been recouped. And largely, the mass majority of that happened prior to our review process. So they had already been identified and resolved before we started our review. At the end of our field work, based on the information we received from the departments, still about $141,000 that was still unrecovered and potentially recoverable. But I did want to point out, as Leah had mentioned, we are steadily getting in information from the departments. And so even as of today, several departments have reported additional recoupment efforts. And those are going to be captured in our follow-up process and should be in the first report that comes out in 27th. As a part of this review, the department started researching some of the duplicate payments. It was identified that there is a system limitation in our financial system. And that system limitations allows voided payments to be reissued if some type of manual hold is not placed in the system. So what we identified, we had several payments. When we spoke to the department, they realized they were duplicates, but they hadn't been cashed, so they just went into the system and requested them to be voided. And you can see the voided transaction in the system, but the same day, those payments generated a new check that were issued. And so when they researched to figure out what was going on, they did identify there was just system limitations. Based on the management responses, they are working with the vendor to identify a patch to resolve this appearance. I did want to point out that, again, this is a review, so the detailed assessments and the root cause analysis for the breakdowns or any of the controls that allow these duplicates will be conducted as a part of our ongoing accounts payable audit. We issued 2 recommendations. The management concurred with both, and each of the recommendations relate to research and the recouping of the duplicate payments identified, as well as resolving or mitigating that system limitation. And as mentioned again, departments are steadily working to collect that. Actually, today I got another email of someone clearing off their bucket list to say, hey, I got this money. Which again goes back to the follow-up, because it came to my email as high importance with an exclamation point. Can you please take me off the list? We've got our money back. And so that's gonna be captured as a part of the follow-up process, so. Any questions?
A math question, 50 invoices totaling 5.7 million bucks is more than $100,000 per invoice, which I guess in the city is not that big, but is that 25 duplicated or to make 50, or is it 50?
That's the actual 50 is the number that was paid. So they come in sets, but 50 would be what was actually paid twice.
Well, that's pretty good, because that means that the very substantial majority of that $5.7 million has been covered already.
I would just, again, one of the things that I think is important for us to highlight some of the unsaid areas. So we know duplicates are part of the AP process. And so it is one that we are dramatically working to make sure we reduce. I think you've already heard that before the process was over, we had corrected it. But that is also a part of the AP process. What will happen will not be eliminated. I want to be clear. There will be areas in which there will be duplicate payments. But one of the things that we're looking at, and I think to the credit of Ms. Shelton and her team, Mr. Martinez, his team, the entire finance apparatus, is when those things happen and they're catching them right away. Some of it is technology. So we're having to rewrite scripts and things of that nature so that they don't issue multiple payments, but also multiple requests for payments, because the audit was focused on our payments. What we look for is, may also be happening on the other end. So we have to correct that as well, where people are receiving duplicate payments. So that's something that the audit taught us how to look for it, because if you can correct it on the AP side, accounts payable, I'm sorry, I'm using, and I don't know what everybody knows, but on the AP side, but also on the AR account receivable side, we've got to make sure as well, because that's direct negative impact to the resident. And so we have been looking at that. And I think I just wanted to highlight, this one has been mostly helpful because of the continuous quality improvement that we talked about before. You can do a thing, but you have to test it out and make sure that we're getting it right. And I think we're seeing that, but we're also discovering new opportunities to say, okay, looking at accounts payable, but we need to focus on accounts receivable, and the same fix can be done for both. That's the part that we've been looking at and trying to address it holistically. And again, I'll just say kudos to Ms. Shelton, who, I think I'm pretty smart. I'm not that smart, so I didn't think of that on my own. So the leadership that we have thinking about it holistically is just helpful for us. So, and it started with a review, an audit review that has gotten us thinking about how to better serve residents. So I'm excited about that.
One thing, it's like Yolanda said, it's a normal thing that occurs. We look at payments. So we'll do this. You'll see this review constantly from our office. And there'll always be duplicate payments. There's just it's part of it. So you'll consistently get these shorter reviews. The goal of them is the city can quickly, the recommendation will normally just be, go get the money back. So the city can recoup money quickly. It's kind of the thought process behind them, to be that other side that helps identify the problem. And one thing I was going to talk about in the audit plan, I'll say it here, it probably makes more sense here, is that, so this continuous monitoring, it's a new initiative that we have. We've always done some continuous auditing in the past, but it was kind of done quickly. And so we want to really, since I started, I used to do this where I came from the Broward and the OIG there. We had a continuous monitoring program where essentially it's just analyzing data, going through data constantly, looking for abnormalities, looking for odd things that management needs to know, that the OIG needs to know, just strange things that we identify just through the data analysis. So you'll continue to see a lot of iterations of our continuous monitoring on different topics, procurement, leave balances, overtime, duplicate payments, and our lead senior auditor, Leanne Castro, she did a great job with our continuous follow-up process. So she's now been assigned this new initiative of our continuous monitoring. So we're going to build out that program. You'll see a lot more of these reviews coming, where they're reviews, not audits, of just, hey, this is what the data shows, this is what the problem might be, violations or issues, and then we let management know, or the OIG if necessary. You'll see a lot more of that as our major initiative as we move forward.
So with this, with the duplicate payments and stuff, whether it's accounts receivable or accounts payable, do you all have a policy, or are you developing a policy where if it's over a certain threshold, that there's like multiple eyes on it? Because there, yes, there are always going to be like duplicates. There's always going to be human error. But if we're talking about like, hey, where should we put our efforts? It's worth it to seek out 500K more so than a $20.
Short answer is yes, and I think that's where the accounts receivable piece has come in play for us. Again, not a part of the audit, is just the team being wise, smart enough, and thoughtful enough to look at it, because on the accounts receivable portion is where that matters ultimately the most when you're talking about threshold, because that is a customer came in or virtually is paying their, just making this up, but as an example, they're paying their car tax or some other activity where, you know, a duplicate billing error causes a larger challenge. On the accounts payable effort, those things actually already exist, and they're actually the reason why they were able to catch them very quickly, and those thresholds of priority also exist. But again, that is what led us to look at it as a broader endeavor to say, hey, do we have the same problem over here? And the impact changes, because if you receive duplicate payments from some entity that can afford to pay it on a high level in the first place, getting it back the same day matters a ton to them, but not as much as John or Jane Doe. Okay, you got it. So, yeah. So yes, they exist, but that's why we just kind of expanded it, and we're looking everywhere. So
I think that'll tie into our refund audit that's currently working on.
correct.
So I just also want to add, because they had mentioned it, the 5 million was a wire. And it was wired one day, but we caught the second day to say that it shouldn't have been wired twice. And so the vendor was contacting the media. We made payment plans that the next invoice would be credited with that. But we do have the process in place where other folks are checking what's being done.
Any other questions? We will move on to the community service meeting. All right, so as you all know, we have completed the Richmond National Community Survey. The community survey, it was done really to fulfill a service efforts and accomplishments requirement that exists in city code, you know, including our office. The survey was done in conjunction with the Department of Citizen Service and Response. And I do really want to thank, I don't think he's here today, but Director Peter Braille for his assistance, his expertise in this survey process. He was extremely helpful in this overall survey process. The OCA's role in the community survey essentially was to ensure the process was objective, independent, transparent, and comparable over time. So to achieve that objective, what we did is we partnered with with Polko, a third-party reputable vendor who does this type of survey work for governments across the country. The survey utilized Polko's standard set of questions so that the results could be compared against those other governmental entities, as well as compared to the results of our last community survey. The presentation of the results of the community survey, as it was a council requirement, was given to council, city council at the Organization and Development Standing Committee last week, I think June 1st. And of course, the link was sent to citizen members of the audit committee so they could review that presentation that was given there. And so the presentation was also given to administration by Director Braille so that the results of the survey can be utilized in ongoing city operations for considerations and input as moving forward. And so because of the presentation was given to council and is available online, we don't have a separate presentation scheduled here today, though we will be happy to take any questions or comments. I'm sure administration would as well, if anyone had any comments or questions on the community survey.
You've already heard my comment. My sense of this thing was that there is a communication problem in that the results of the survey reflect a lack of understanding about how much good stuff is going on.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you do that. You know, it's
Well,
a constant problem of city government, but I think you guys have done a great job, and I think the survey reflects an underappreciation.
There's also trust but verify, right? Citizens have probably seen some starts and stops of positive things in the past, so some of it is just sustained effort. But also we're using new tools. Very recently, we partnered with the Richmond Times Dispatch, yes, I did say that right, to do some additional paid marketing, you know, to go out and tell our story. We're expanding but I don't like doing that kind of stuff. So we did a podcast, right, temporarily, so we can tell people about the things that are going on that are really good, and they've got a pretty large swath of people. So that's part of it. But we also started, I don't know if y'all got a chance to attend some of the budget town halls. I think our first one, the council member was there. So we're taking those decisions to the public and bringing it back. Those type of things, just telling the message more and letting people see it. Even today, I mean, you got people tuned in remotely who say, oh, wow, y'all working at this. You don't have it right, but you're making progress. That's not often what's told. And so I think it's just more trust but verify, and also, you know, the volley of arrows approach, just making sure that we tell the story in as many mediums as possible. And we're not shying away from that because there's a lot of good work to be told. So kudos to the Office of Strategic Communications, partnering with our council members, but also the results matter. And so today we're talking about some of the results aren't perfect, but they're positive. I think that matters because people just want to see improvement before they trust. So it's a long road, but we're built for it. We'll keep plugging away.
Good work. It's fun to have been here. This is the end of my 9th year on this committee, and it's just great. The tone has changed, and it's because I think we're kind of all collectively we're doing a better job.
Yeah.
Great.
I will just say, I know we say that often, and I think for me, coming in as a new guy, there was great work that happened before, and it has laid the foundation to where I'm coming in and I'm saying, Michelle, look, we can just do this. Ms. Jackson, can you tell this is already in place? It's not perfect, but the iterations that have happened probably over your whole 10 years are the thing that we're using to jumpstart it. And it takes those pioneers who were here early. Look, the pioneers, you can always tell them there's an arrow in their back. Those arrows you took 10 years ago are helping me not have as many. Well, I got a lot, but not as many in my back moving forward. So I would offer that work doesn't get lost. You know, there were councils before then who did a great work, paved the way, and now we're just trying to continue it and improve. We don't stand alone.
Very generous minded. I appreciate that.
Listen, I believe it. I wouldn't say it otherwise. So yeah.
Any other questions? No? All right, I think you need to.
We're good. Got a whole one slide. You can hang on to that clear. Mr. Chairman, sir, appreciate the time. Just want to bring you up to date on our staffing. We originally anticipated losing one investigator. We wound up losing two, both to federal law enforcement. They provided them some pretty attractive offers. We lost two. So we have hired two additional investigators since that time. Fantastic investigators, and we've also hired a criminal investigative analyst that works for us part-time. She's been an absolute game changer for our office. We recognize that there was a need for us to look at hiring a proactive investigator. So right now we're pretty much reactive, but we're just kind of catching things as they're coming. We've made an ask of council. Council said, yeah, absolutely, that's something that's needed, and they have given us the funding for an additional body, so we're grateful to the council for that. That body right now is going to be doing more proactive work, and they're going to be lockstep with the auditor's office, where they're going to be able to immediately go chase someone down the rabbit holes that may look like fraud, that the auditor's office just doesn't have the time to pursue, but this person can. So we have an investigator right now that fits the bill perfectly for that, and he has expressed interest in doing this. So we're attaching him to up to the OCA this week. Matter of fact, the first meeting where we're going to trade information is going to be on the 18th of June. And then we will backfill his position later on in the year, probably around August or September. But that will bring us, it will be fully staffed at that point. As far as investigations go, to give you a snapshot, this is over the last 6 months. So currently we have, this slide is dated as of Friday. It's 23 as of Friday. So we're at 23 open and active investigations currently. In the last 6 months, since the last audit committee meeting, we've closed 17 investigations. 10 new investigations in the last 6 months. It's actually 12 now. 3 of the investigations that we closed were substantiated, 8 unsubstantiated, and 6 were referred to other entities, be it either in the city or outside due to jurisdictional matters. So a lot of the times we'll get tips that are sent to us that are more appropriately leadership problems than they are an IT investigation. And so we'll refer those either to the department, to the senior leadership there, or we'll refer them over to HR, to the employee relations. So that when you see those 6 referrals, it's either going to HUD OIG, Medicaid, or Social Security OIG, or internal statement. And the last thing, along the lines of your communication, 2 things that we're changing is you're going to be seeing a new reporting format. That first report, the new format went out, I believe it was today or yesterday. We're going to make a little bit of a tweak to that, but we realize the reporting that we're providing not only to city leadership, but to the citizens is not as in-depth as it needs to be. It gives them more of a 10,000-foot view than getting down into the nitty-gritty. So the new reporting format will have links that are clickable so that they can see the documents that will lead them to the conclusion that we reached in our investigation as to whether or not it's substantiated or unsubstantiated. So we're transitioning to that right now. And then lastly, we were talking about communication. This will be the first year that the Office of Inspector General is producing an annual report that will be available to city leadership and will be available to the public as well, where they can see where it is that the budget money that is being provided to the OIG, how it's being used, what it's costing every person individually, and they can get an idea of the investigations that we're working and the outcomes and the benefit that the OIG is.
And that's going to be available on the city website.
That'll be available on the IG's website. IG. Yes, sir. And our intention is to get that out by the end of the month. Yes, sir. And that'll cover.
Yeah, it's deadline right now.
That one the deputy knows.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any questions?
I have a question about reporting fees, and I think you have answered in part with the fact that you have this reporting system. You came to us in February with 3 substantiated cases that were closed. 3 more have just closed to make up to the, or should be at 9.
This is a snapshot of the last 6 months.
Over the last 6 months.
Last 6 months. So this is from the last committee meeting to.
So no new cases have been closed that were substantiated.
3 new since.
3 new ones.
Since the last committee meeting. 3.
So and looking at what you've closed now and going back to your reporting piece, what's the office's process for how it produces these reports? Because I've looked online at the OIG's website. There are 2 reports that have been posted since January. Close however many up to date. You've been here now for just a year, right, altogether. So what's that process like for producing the reports and getting them on the website?
So that's been a challenge for us, is the getting them to the website has been a real challenge. So we send a report to the website. It was either yesterday or today. That report, getting it uploaded to our website, took us 5 days to do. It was just a challenge for us to get it done. So the report gets completed. The report is reviewed by the investigations manager. Subsequently, it's reviewed by the deputy inspector general. If any changes need to be made or additional work needs to be done, it goes back to the investigator. At that point, it comes back to me for review. I issue the signature, and then it should be uploaded to our internal and external.
Are you producing reports and publicizing them for every substantiated case that's been closed?
Yes.
Okay. So
and for some that are unsubstantiated.
Okay.
Yeah. So I went through and looked today, and full disclosure, I looked today to make sure that the new format report was uploaded. I didn't look at the others to see if they've been put there or not, but I.
That's also, I think you're right, just to the comment you made at the top about showing work on, here's the money that city council's appropriated, and here's the investigations and what we're doing to make good on what we're getting paid to do. So I think it's excellent work.
Yeah, we're excited about that annual report. I think it'll be informative for city leadership and informative for citizens.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
No other questions? Move on to the purchasing card. It's it should say program update. Program update from Director Alvarez and Mr. Don.
Yeah, I'm gonna give Mr. Alvarez chair, the big chair. Put him in the hot seat. But, okay, we got a hotter seat. I think I would just highlight on this one, just to introduce it, is that, so today, really excited because the mayor, and you come on up, Mr. Hot, sure. But, you know, I think today we tried to combine a few things. Number one is making sure that we are telling the appropriate story, and appropriate means full story. Where are we in our processes? We've had some success, but we're not done yet. That message is important, you know, for people to know that these things will continue. But I think the second part of it is, you know, there are multiple parts of managing, say this time for purchasing cards. So it's not just about, okay, you get a card, you get trained, you submit, etc. It is enterprise-wide activity, and the decisions that we're making impact that. Number one is, what is the universe of our cards? And so before, I think it was universe of about 320, right? Yes, sir. It was a universe of about 320. I think we went down, I always say 47, that's wrong, 50, 67. So it was 67, which was a pretty significant drop. But the first number didn't have a basis or reasoning. It's just, yeah, people wanted the card, we provided them the card, and there we go. Now the 67 is, who has to, does the government, what stops the government from crippling? 67 is the number, great. That's the number we'll utilize, we'll test, we'll make sure that these things work, and we will, you know, report back on it. And the testing part is probably most important, because this group gets to look at it and say, which they have said, I think maybe 2-3 times, nope, not good enough, not good enough, which is great, because once it was good enough, Mr. Alvarez and his team partnered with the necessary external entities to do what has been regarded as some of the best training possible to deliver. And that's kind of how it works. It is, said something in my first week, it was, if it's your idea and y'all push it forward, it's management. If we have to tell you to do it, or external people tell you to do it, now it's a critique and it's a, you know, it's a punishment. We're focused on better management. And so I think that's what you'll hear it today in the P-card process, but I want to make sure folks know that that is our posture, period, is we're focused on better management. So that part, yeah, I think, you know, making sure we're staying lockstep with the mayor. And then I'm also making sure when management is in my title, you know what I mean? So you gotta make sure that, you know, you're delivering something that continuously quality and improve. So with that, I was telling folks at this press conference today, the devil is in the details. We're gonna say the angel is in the details. And so our angel delivering see the halo. And when you start, the halo will be so bright you couldn't see it.
Don't look into the light.
He'll give you an update on what we have done to get to this point. And again, not over this point, continuous quality improvement. This is where we are now.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Priya, thank you so much for allowing us to hear it. And we're so glad because we of service to you to help you achieve that award. We'll talk later. I was going to walk. This was a big opportunity for DPS. You know, at the time.
time when the audit came out, we had one employee, working at DPS on P-card. Now and then we pull in other folks, and they supported that one person, but it's a huge capacity issue we had in DPS. In general, when I first got here in 22, we had a huge DPS capacity issue, and we've staffed up and we've gone into other facets to try to really be of service to the city and the community in many different ways than your average, procurement organization in a locality. P-card was kind of a lead cover. The audit came out, and you guys did an exit briefing with us, and it was at that time we said, okay, we've got to just reset this thing. So I'm going to walk through quickly some just areas, kind of a chronology of how we came to that. The reset happened. We suspended just about every P-card, right? There was 320. We then went down to 67. We're up to 73 right now, basically because during the recent winter storms we had, we needed to support DSS, some other folks that were supporting the community, whether it's food, whether it's housing, whether it's shelter. We wanted to make sure that at a moment's notice in an emergency, those teams could go out, support the citizens. So we provided some additional cards out there, and we've been tracking. And I'm going to thread this throughout, but we track every transaction from every card member here on out. And that's just what we do. So we went from 320 to 67. We put usage restrictions on the remaining cards around Venmo, Square, right, PayPal. We went through that. We all went through that. Suspended food, travel, and purchases on Amazon. Right. We made sure that there was a critical purchase request form that came from DPS, and it had to be part of the reconciliation package, the documentation to reconcile any purchase on a P-card. So everybody had to use that form in order to get it. While we were doing that, we're looking down the road. What are we going to do to overhaul the program, and then what does relaunch down the road over the horizon really look like? During this evaluation and overhaul, we had a 5-day period in which people could close up to the closure of close, right? Up to the closure for the card. Well, we just made it 5 days for the cardholder to reconcile. From that point, 5 days to approve. That's the limit that we have right now, and that's what we're operating under. Nothing has changed. That's part of the new policy. Each approver can only have 3 cardholders. That's the limit. If more cardholders come into the department, more approvers will come into the department. That's the rule. That's in the policy. All approvers had to sign an approver agreement acknowledging fiduciary responsibility for maintaining this and maintaining oversight over the cardholders. We brought in Card Integrity as a third party to do analytics, to do reporting to us and provide us reports that looked at spend, that looked at category spend, that looked at card holders, that looked at potential violations, potential issues against the data that we were building into the P-card policy, right? So we're building these rules, and they're building tools to kind of map against those rules to make sure that we're receiving reports that are in alignment with how we're building the policy. Called in NIGP, they supported us, provided some consulting and best practices to kind of bolster up the policy as well, pull that information in as well. Let's see, we did a review of the overall program. It's a Bank of America program. It's off a common contract. Many localities here in the state have a P-card program that is a Bank of America. Other banks have it. JP Morgan Chase, US Bank. Those are 2 other programs that we looked at to see if we could better align with those programs or stay with the Bank of America. Jody's team did a great job evaluating the criteria to measure, against which program we should communicate and stayed with Bank of America. The other thing too is uprooting a program and then replacing it with a new one. That just creates more turmoil in the middle of the morning. And the idea was to try to, you know, how do we create calmer seas in this process? One of the main points I think that we've been speaking about today, earlier, and upstairs, we were kind of talking about it with some of the team upstairs, is that when we made this change, it was a huge disruption to the city, to the staff. Right? They were relying on this payment method for years, and at a moment's notice, you know, they could just go and do what they need to do. Well, we totally flipped that on them for good reason, and we needed to make sure that we were there to support them whenever they needed support on the new rules, on the new guidelines, new approaches, on the new policy on how we're going to operate from here on out. And Jody's team and the rest, you know, the rest of the city staff on my team, the DPS staff, was just totally engaged with Jody's team to make sure that the turnaround time on getting questions answered and support for that those groups was you know, in an instant. Okay? There wasn't long lead times to get questions answered already. So I really appreciate my staff for all the work they did, and really the PCARD staff as well. You know, we got to the point to where we've developed a lot of these resources. We have them out on my COR, right? All of the PCARD resources are out there. All the tools are out there. All the forms are out there. Tips, job aids. We had a new instructional designer in the organization who built the trailer. With Jody's support, Shannon Roberson and on our staff did an incredible job. I totally agree with you. Government, to me, is some of the best training that I've seen as well. When I first went through it as a test case, I was amazed, and I'm glad it worked. We got a lot of great comments from staff that's taken the training, PCARD holders and approvers, that they really appreciate what we've done there. So kudos to Shannon and to Jody staff again. You know, we had 16 recommendations. What do you call them? Management opinions, is that what they are?
Items.
Management items. 58 management items. We closed 12 of the 16. 3 are pending right now, and then 1 we're working with HR to close as well. So we're on a good glide slope to kind of lay into this thing, and so again, I appreciate the detail. And that's what it is, the detail in that management group of suggestions, recommendations. We threaded a lot of that into the policy. We threaded a lot of that into our approaches. It was really, we could take that and measure it against what other organizations were doing. I sat down in San Diego County and went through their PCARD program when I was out there at a conference. And I knew the director there, dropped in, went through his program, got some ideas, got some different approaches, and then kind of measured those against what you have, so we can kind of meld this together into a better policy. We've relaunched this program with the same 73 cards that we have right now. The growth of cards is not going to happen yet. We're going to evaluate the program, call it a soft relaunch or a pilot, and we're at a point to where we built 6 different metrics that we need to meet. They're around training, transaction compliance, documentation compliance, cardholder reconciliation timeliness, approver timeliness, and there's a maximum on violations. The city has to meet those in order for this PCARD program to work. And you know, we're examining every transaction, we're examining the metrics. We just started down that road. As we see the metrics maybe not falling on the right side of where they should be, we'll be talking with some of the cardholders, approvers, to make sure that, hey, this is the impact we're having to moving this forward. Please support us, work with us, and you know, give them the pep talk they need to help support the program as well. So again, it's a 90-day freeze right now. It may go longer. We may not hit that milestone, but, you know, we're tracking it. We want to make sure that it's the right program, doing the right thing for the city. So that's where we're sitting right now. I just wanted to make sure that you know, based on the audit, this is the growth out of it. This is where we are. I think we're on, like I said, a very good glide path or trajectory to make this one of the better programs in the nation. So appreciate it.
Great, thanks for the good work.
Yeah, so any questions from you guys about the program or for administration? It was a lot, I know, and it was been fantastic for doing progress and closing the recommendations. Again, you know, as we talk about, risk-based monitoring is the approach to management. That's what you guys are doing with the data.
I have a couple. First of all, I'm really excited to get this update. So thank you. Thank you for all your hard work and your team. This was messy. So I think you all were smart to, you know, shut it down and say like, hey, let's start from the beginning, because, you know, it's not like everybody in the city was going nuts, but, you know, when there's a couple bad actors, then it reflects poorly on everybody. And so like, obviously some changes needed to be made. Super excited to hear about all these updates and how quickly you brought this together, and the training sounds robust. Yes, Riyadh talked to me about it separately also, and so that's great. And I think, you know, during my time with the city, that was an area where it seemed like there were always holes. So for you and your team to like really lean into the training of it all is huge. Can you talk a little bit about the staff that you said, because you said, or somebody said, there was one person dealing with these 300 plus cards. So how many people do you have now?
We have 3 full-time on our sub-department.
Okay.
Jody Phillips is the supervisor.
Okay.
And then got an analytics person, and then administrator.
Okay. I also think that's great. And I know that procurement has also historically been understaffed. I mean, the city as a whole has been understaffed. I don't recall any time any department coming and being like, I have too many people, or I am at the level I was funded. But I am really happy to hear that, because we cannot say, hey, you can't have a credit card. Like, that is just not a reasonable way to do business. We are too big of a city. We're too big of a city government. There are things that people are going to need to pay with a credit card. And so to put these parameters around it, build the training and bring in the people and everything, I think is really smart, because we can't just shut it down and say, okay, we're not going to do this because it was broken. I think, you know,
Thought about it.
I'm sure that might have been easier. But you reaching out to other localities and really like just building this from scratch, I'm very impressed, and thank you for your hard work.
Thank you. I've got a great team. That's for sure.
Good.
Thank you.
The related question, someone who does not have a P card, who spends money that needs to be reimbursed, what's the reimbursement process?
There's a reimbursement process. Let's say I decide that I'm not using a P card in my department, and I buy travel for a government conference. I'll pay for the airfare, and then I'll submit a travel reimbursement that'll go through my boss, and then go through finance for reimbursement.
How from the day you submit your T&E, how long do you expect it before you get reimbursed?
It's pretty darn quick.
not the only way to be able to make a purchase. I mean, there are purchase orders for which you would go through. There are a variety of different processes, and I think what we've done is elevate all of those so that people, if you're not using the purchase card process, then you can use the purchase order or the others.
His answer was a great answer, because the other thing that's really demoralizing is to be floating a major city with your.
Yeah, that's right.
So this update, I think, was one of the things you guys, as both Mr. Bemis and Ms. Nye requested as updates every audit committee for a different topic from one of the prior audits. So we can talk, I guess, feedback as to what other ones you might. The one I had next planned, speaking with administration, was the non-departmental audit that we had issued last year, but with the grants. And so we have that. I've spoken to one of the DCAOs for the next audit committee meeting, a potential topic. I don't, because I think the city will have gone through that process. It's ready to update on it.
Right.
Okay. So the next presentation is me, the audit plan. Okay. All right, so before we go into the fiscal year 2027 audit plan, just a quick reminder, high level of how the audit plan kind of is formed. We perform an annual risk assessment process for the city where we look at the budget, look at the money, look at other prior audits we've issued. We have lots of observations that we kind of consider, and really a lot of comes from feedback from city council, from the mayor, and from city administration on areas of concern, areas where they want us to look into something, a risk that they see, and then we take all that information. And of course, we have the limited, we have limited capacity and what we can do. And so we say, okay, where do we have the right capacity and the right knowledge and skills to have do the most impactful audit for the city? And we kind of come up with a plan from there. It's important to note that the audit plan is a flexible kind of living document, and it can change and it will change throughout the year that due to requests coming in from city council, as it's happened just last year, from administration, or just emerging risks that I observe as a city auditor. I say, oh, you know what, this is a more important topic to use our resources for. So when that does happen, you'll be, of course, updated at the audit committee meeting, and as well as sometimes we may send a memo informing you of what those changes may be. So first, in the plan, we have the audits that are currently in progress. We have quite a bit of audits that are currently in progress. Sometimes these audits, they take a lot longer than we think. Once we complete our risk assessment, we realize, oh, this is way more than we thought that we had to do. Currently, we have the security of city facilities audit. That audit it's scheduled to be completed. We're hoping late next month. It's focused in on the process for security facilities overall, and a real emphasis on the management of the security contract, as it has a huge financial impact. Next, we have the streetlight maintenance phase 2 audit. That audit is done. We've completed it. We're actually tomorrow, we're gonna make the final edits to the report. We're hoping to have that sent by the end of the week to administration, if not by Monday, to start the management response period before we were able to finalize that. The likely date you will get it is, if not the last week of the month, maybe the first week of the next month. And then we have the finance department refund process audit. This is our #1 highest priority audit, as requested from city council and the mayor, to look at the finance department's refund process and ensure that we're complying. We've had to allocate pretty much half of the office's resource to this audit to get it done quickly. We're in good shape on this particular audit. It looks at the process to issue refunds. Is it accurate? Is it timely? Is it in line with best practices? We have the accounts payable. We call it the accounts payable audit on the plan that's currently in process. It's really a procurement to payment audit. It's looking at all functions of accounts payable. The vendor master file, to what the department's invoice review processes look like, to the accounts payable process itself for timely and compliant payments. The resources from this audit were moved to the refund audit for now. So it's on hold. I think we have one staff member working on it. It's a little bit on hold. We're hoping to kind of pick it back up next month once the refund audit kind of gets to a place where we can take some resources off and reallocate. We have the fire payroll audit, and this was an audit I think requested from city council as well as from our assessment. It's looking to the accuracy of the fire department's payroll, the efficiency of the payroll process, the controls that are in place, and of course, the accuracy of the leave balances. There's been some risk with that identified over the years. So then we have, new audits that we hope to start throughout the year. Again, sometimes I guess things happen, but these are the ones we are intending to start throughout the fiscal year, as well as our monitoring reviews and our follow-up projects. First, we have the facilities maintenance that it was from the last year's plan. It was one of the audits we didn't get to start that rolled over to this year. It's a very important audit. Aging infrastructure is a major risk at the national and local level, as we all know. So we do want to look at the process to prioritize these, really focus on preventative maintenance. And it's a big audit because there's so many facilities across the city. So we're hoping to start that at some point this fiscal year. We have a FOIA audit. The city has moved to a new centralized FOIA management system called Just FOIA. They just launched it maybe a week or two ago. And so we do want to, this fiscal year, look into that process as we're using this new function. Are we aligned with, of course, the law, with timely FOIA requests, accurate FOIA requests, and really with best practices in the industry, that we want to ensure that we have worked those best practices into our process. We have a delinquent tax collections audit. It's kind of the other side of the refund. We look at how we refund money to residents and businesses, as well as how we collect delinquent funds that are owed to us. This was requested by City Council. So it's on the plan. There's a large delinquent balance. And so we want to look into how we prioritize, how we review, and are we, again, aligned with best practices in collection efforts to merely maximize those collections. Our follow-up audits, led by Leanne Castro, as you guys always, I don't have to talk much about that, continues. It's way more work than it looks like, if I'm being honest. Our continuous monitoring reviews, again, that's the new initiative I described as we're going to further, different data analysis. We have 2 more that are coming in the next few months that we're working on. And then I have an item for just special requests and projects as the Affordable Housing Trust Fund was a special request that we had to work in. So we want some capacity for that, as well as Mr. Donald and his team. They're always asking for different, ideas or something they would like us to look at. We want to have that capacity to assist city administration. So we budgeted some time there and just to kind of save that space. We have special projects that we go out through every year. The cybersecurity network vulnerability assessment is one you guys are probably used to. We're hoping to do 2 this year because it's an important topic. At least one. We partner with a IT firm who really specializes in this, and we partner with IT on this generally to look into the cybersecurity risks. And of course, we issue that. It's always exempt because it is cybersecurity, but you guys get the presentation every year. We have 300 hours that we have by contract have to assist CLA on the single audit and or the ACFR, so we always budget for that. And then I think, as was mentioned by the IG, we have an initiative to work with the IG this year. It's a baseline. Honestly, it's probably not going to be 200 hours, I don't expect, but this year's a baseline of how much time, what that process is going to look like as we kind of launch that initiative. And so we do wanted to think about that on the plan. It's okay, there's going to be, when it's appropriate and requested, how we provide our support, how we work together, our data analysis and different, different techniques that we have. And then our continuous risk assessment, I budgeted on this plan. I haven't always in the past. Traditionally, we have it in this office. But risk assessment is not, I mentioned annual. It's not an annual thing. We do it annually, but it's a continuous process. And so we have Eunice Carter, you heard from earlier, our quality assurance specialist in our office. She's going to take on this initiative where essentially we meet with departments throughout the year to understand their risks, understand what's emerging to them. It helps build out the audit plan, or it helps us understand when we need to provide some management advisory, maybe quicker in the moment as to what they're seeing and what help they need. And so we want, we're working with administration on a survey process and to better have a risk function, both in the city and in our office. So we want to launch this continuous process we're working on. And then there's some alternative projects I have on here that, again, if capacity is available, or maybe we need to switch focuses. We have a large repository of audits that we would like to do. These 2 made the alternative plan. Police department payroll, as we're doing fire, and we think there's some related risks that we're seeing that could be helpful in that type of audit, as well as a purchasing card follow-up audit. I know they're still stress testing. They still have one major recommendation, I think, left. And so we do want a follow-up of the P card program to see they've designed the controls now. Are they effective? But we want to give them a chance to test the effectiveness of their processes before we do follow-up. So this, if we do this audit, it would launch late in the fiscal year. If not, it'll be next fiscal year, and it might be an annual ongoing audit that we start doing from now on as we kind of assess that. That's it for the plan. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Question. With the delinquent tax collections, when's the last time we did that audit?
That, when was that? Something like.
It's like 2018, 2019 fiscal.
Yeah.
That's a big number.
Yeah, the balance is 86 million. So council, I request us to look into the process again. So we're hoping, again, there's a lot of finance audits, right? I know Michelle is probably tired of this. It's a lot, and we recognize that. AP is a separate kind of function, so it's split a little bit, but after refund, we'll probably go into delinquent taxes. I think it makes the most sense because it kind of creates the holistic view of both refunds and delinquent taxes. So that's currently our plan. And the team who's finishing the refund audit, it makes sense that they would roll into the delinquent side of things to get a better view. So
It's a big delay.
I know.
I mean, I think it's a great audit to do because, sorry, but finance just gets a lot of audits, but just because then council can work with the mayor's office to figure out if there's some sort of program they can put out there to recoup some of the funds. So.
Surprisingly, it's a lot. I think you told me that it's significantly more personal property tax than real estate tax, which means it's more smaller numbers, not larger numbers, which creates its own challenge.
Yeah, no, and again, some of the information, like from the refund, there'll be a lot of recommendations on that side, and so we want to make sure the recommendation also on the other side of holistically manage the operation. I think it's the most beneficial approach. So I apologize in advance, but I do think it's probably most impactful and beneficial for the city together.
Audit committee schedule.
Oh, okay, yeah, the last item, I just wanted to, the next audit committee is scheduled, I think it's September 9th, but there's a council meeting that day because of the Labor Day holiday. So we have to change the meeting date. We haven't finalized it yet. We're still working with procurement because we're in the process of an RFP for the external audit services. We have a new contract. So the audit committee has to approve that piece once it's there. And so we're still waiting with procurement to figure out the right timeline. I think we have it as October currently is when the timing would match, but we still need another couple weeks to say, okay, this is the most logical timeline to time it all well. So we'll be in touch in the next few weeks to figure out a new date of availability, but September 9th wouldn't work just because of the council meeting. That was just the one thing I wanted to add.
But you expect it will be sometime in September? Is that
You were saying October.
October is more likely. Yeah. Oh, one thing that we do have to do, Brad just reminded me, is vote on the audit plan. One of the things that we've traditionally done is approval of the audit
I
plan.
move that we approve the audit plan. Second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. All opposed? Done.
So that's it for the agenda from our side.
Well, thank you. This is great. I mean, this has been a good meeting. A lot of good stuff. Thank you, guys.
Chairman, I know, Councilman, please. Oh, I was just going to say that I've reached out separately for questions for both our Inspector General and our auditor. And these guys are really top line, fantastic responses, transparent. They're doing the people's work. And I think with the reflection of everyone on the table here, it's a real whole government approach. I mean, the testament to leadership, administration, City Hall. So very appreciative. Thank you both.
Here, I just want to say thank you to our audit staff for the extraordinary work that you've been doing. And especially for the pre-meetings, Mr. Chair, which gets a lot of my questions answered in advance of this meeting. And then with our DD office and what they're looking to do to be collaborative. And then all of our staff. And this is the way that this is done. It is such that it is intentional to collaborate and to work to improve our government. And so I'm very appreciative of those efforts across the board. And especially pre-meetings, let's keep doing those. Mr. Chair, we got a lot to But thank you all for work that's extraordinarily well done and commitment to our city. And it's the highest level of functionality. And congratulations again on the recognition. So just wanted to recognize it.
Oh, man, thank you for that.
Yeah.
I wish the mayor were here because I think having the CAO and having the head of the city council and the auditor and the OIG and having a moment like this where people are congratulating one another and thanking one another for their help is a different tune than we've sung in the past. It's fantastic. Move to adjourn. Okay. Second.